In the bustling town, Saika dragged Shigeru into an armory shop, her eyes gleaming as she purchased a hefty stockpile of arrows. Shigeru watched in awe, knowing he could produce arrows with his skill, but when Saika teased him about not buying any, she quickly remembered his empty pockets and laughed it off. Soon, their companions rejoined them, announcing they'd found an inn. Shigeru, stubborn as ever, insisted he'd rather sleep in the park, but Saika grabbed his collar, declaring she'd cover his stay, pulling him along with no harm done to his tattered clothes. At the inn, while the girls showered, Shigeru sat alone, his mind racing with thoughts of making money. He opened his status window, scrolling through his skills to find one that could turn a profit. The next morning, he surprised everyone by bringing food to the table. When asked how he managed it, he quipped about slaving away, though in truth, he'd bartered his conjured arrows for goods. Grateful, the group thanked him, and Shigeru muttered to himself that he'd repaid his debt to Saika. Eager for coin, as monsters dropped none, they decided to venture to a nearby cave for their next quest. On their way, a stranger approached, offering to guide them through the cave. Introducing himself as Kayashiro, a fellow reincarnated soul, he handed them a one-time discount item and pitched his services as a guide for new reincarnates. Shigeru, ever wary, left the decision to Seiji, who haggled and hired Kayashiro for 120 riras a day. Kayashiro equipped them and led the way. As they traveled, they encountered monsters. Saika, firing arrows with her usual gusto, missed her shots until Kayashiro offered her pointers, turning her aim deadly accurate. The others joined the hunt, and during a break, they trained under Kayashiro's guidance. He turned to Shigeru, asking if he'd join, but Shigeru dismissed his staff skill as useless. Kayashiro countered that its final ability was extraordinary, though Shigeru recalled a warning from his status window: using it against a giant orc would devastate a 200-kilometer radius, potentially wiping out everything from Saitama Prefecture to the Pacific Ocean. He'd cancelled it then, wary of its power. Kayashiro urged him to fight actively, warning he'd end up retired like himself. Curious, Shigeru asked why Kayashiro retired. The guide revealed he'd been part of a mercenary group but quit, unable to keep up, especially after his leader became a king with a level of 80 and an average stat of 160. Shigeru muttered that 3-digit stats were weak, but Kayashiro, misinterpreting, apologized for overwhelming him and encouraged perseverance. They reached the cave, an ancient ruin glowing with eerie beauty. Saika, trembling like a child, hesitated at the entrance but grew excited inside, only to revert to childish fear when Kayashiro warned her to stay alert. Seiji, intrigued, asked her real-world age. Stammering, Saika admitted she was 17, not 16, while Seiji revealed he was 30. They pressed deeper, battling monsters under Kayashiro's navigation until they reached a grand door. Saika, eager, rushed forward but froze when Kayashiro asked her level. At level 3, she was no match for the boss beyond, and terrified, she hid behind the others. Seiji suggested they call it a day, thanking Kayashiro, who praised his leadership and led them to a special event, a safe room impervious to monsters or magic, crafted by another reincarnate. Inside, Saika marveled at a table of snacks, but Shigeru's status window flashed a warning: the bottle Kayashiro offered contained sleeping gas. Shigeru, immune to it, muttered about the poison but stayed silent. Seiji declined the drink, wanting to return to town before sunset, and Shigeru muttered approval of his caution. Kayashiro, disappointed, suggested celebrating in the village instead. Seiji removed his helmet, apologizing for doubting Kayashiro's generosity. Kayashiro offered him the drink, and he accepted it. Seiji began to blame himself for suspecting such kindness, while Saika gleefully asked for seconds. Shigeru, wary of the gas's glow revealing his antidote magic, stalled with conversation, asking about their past lives. The group fell silent, shocked, and Saika called his name sadly. Shigeru apologized for his misstep, and Seiji shared his story. Fed up with school, he left home, started a successful company, but was misled by a salesman, Shigeru, it turned out, who advised him to relax. Following this, his company thrived, but an AI project led to its bankruptcy and his mental breakdown, prompting his arrival in this world with a vow not to fail again. He asked Shigeru's last name, but Shigeru lied, saying Sasaki. They all fell asleep, but Shigeru stayed awake, noticing Kayashiro and his group chaining them up. Shigeru confronted about his past, but before he could act, Seiji awoke, warning the captors not to touch them. Kayashiro mocked Seiji's defiance, saying it was all he could do. Shigeru muttered about Seiji getting caught in his attack. Seiji fought free but was overpowered. Kayashiro revealed this world was for losers and called them naive, ordering their capture. Shigeru leaped up, using his pig jump skill to crash into the enemies, urging Seiji to leave it to him. Seiji refused to abandon his friend, declaring he could defeat the gang with one hit. Keiichiro scoffed, ordering his men to take Shigeru first, but Shigeru's unharmed resilience stunned them. Keiichiro threatened Seiji to surrender, but Shigeru attacked, silencing him. Seiji, glowing with power, chanted an oath to protect his friends, a power fueled by anger. Keiichiro ignored his warning, attacking, but Shigeru shielded Seiji, urging him to show their strength. Seiji completed his chant, transforming into the indomitable hero Aldine, ready to face the foes.